This presentation will cover three things. The first thing is minimal compliance, basically defining the line between a company's survival and success in ethical terms. Then we're going to talk about companies' blind spots when ethics are questionable. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the things we can do as ethical companies to make things better. The crux of this presentation rests on the difference between must and should. When leaderships confuse minimal ethical compliance with ethical decision-making habits and processes, they confuse with what they must do with what they should do to be a successful and ethical company. In most states, companies have a minimum, a regulatory floor of ethics that they have to meet in order to survive or to remain operating in that state. Companies walk along this floor and they say, okay, we're going to be doing these ethical things so we can survive here. And survival means things like this. They won't be sued. They won't have monetary judgments placed against them. They won't have to be sued in various jurisdictions or districts or things like that in states. They won't be seen as an evil corporation by people. They'll be able to raise money and get the financing they need. And they won't lose their headquarters in the state. By meeting these laws, these ethical requirements, they get to survive. However, that doesn't mean they're successful and they grow. For example, when they put on the rose-colored lenses, they see their ethical minimal compliance as a key to success or being successful. They see meeting the minimum as being ethically excellent, which is something that needs to be avoided. Because meeting the minimum doesn't mean you're excelling, it just means you're meeting the minimum. Also, when companies meet the minimum, they treat ethics like a checklist. They say we are doing this and that and that. And once we do all those things, we're fine. We're considerate of the community and we're an ethical corporation. But we all know that's not true. Companies with minimal ethical compliance often forget the role of culture and operations at work. They're too busy making sure the checklist is checked off rather than looking at themselves as to improve themselves. And this leads to problems within companies, such as ethical risks, branding risks, and image risks. So when companies only think about the regulatory floor, the minimum survive, they forget what they need to do ethically to be successful in the community in which they live. When a company is concerned about minimal compliance, just meeting the minimum ethics laws to stay in business, they engage in three behaviors: rationalization, a neglect of returns, and confusion about innovation. For example, they rationalize a lot of their behaviors using comments like this: well, we followed the law, therefore we're ethical, we're fine, which may or may not be true. They also invoke a principle where, hey, other people in our industry do this, so do we, so we're okay, which may or may not be true. And sometimes they'll admit to a fault without saying it was an ethical concern. For example, we meant well, but, and so forth. So when meeting just minimal compliance, you often have to appeal to rationalization for your actions and trying to justify using that rationale, which is not always a good thing. Also, returns are impacted when ethics are minimal. For example, companies really tend to think about short-term results using a very lean culture or a very lean staffing model to maximize the numbers each quarter. That's a problem. When you get down to it, that's not really a way to build a sustainable company. Sure, it helps control costs and other things, but is it really a way to grow a company that's ethical, legal, and fair and has a chance to basically expand its horizons and find new markets? That's up for debate. Also, when a company is ran lean, it's really difficult to foster a culture there. And as a result, you'll end up with a fragmented culture with all these differences, which may or not be reconcilable. So that can lead to issues as well. And last but not least, innovation can be impacted when ethics are at a minimum. Because when people put on the rose-colored glasses and ethics aren't really part of the discussion, there's this strange optimism bias where everything the company can do in the future will turn out good. They don't think about the ethical argument of, yeah, there's going to be some good stuff, there's going to be some bad stuff, and we need to consider both. Weak ethical thinking only focuses on one or the other, and in business, as to keep the business morale up and funding going, it tends to be on the optimistic side. So when you are meeting only the minimum for ethical concerns or the regulatory floor. You're going to develop blind spots as you peer through the rose-colored lenses. And these blind spots lead to all sorts of operational and other problems, as you can see here. Now, what if ethical rigor or ethical thinking on the job? We can do a few things to kickstart it and get ethics back into the company. So, for example, we can look at culture and say, well, developing a culture that's legal, ethical, and fair and treats people well is a little more important than just meeting the regulatory minimum or the checklist. And if we keep that in mind, a lot of our discussions will hover around or circle around how do we treat this group better? How do we treat our customers better? How do we act in a more ethical and stand-up way in our community? Also, we need to figure out what the black boxes are. These are the magical things where we put inputs into them and outputs come out, but we don't know how it works. When we crack open these boxes, usually we find all sorts of wrong things going on. Illegal things, unethical things, unfair things, all sorts of stuff. So in order to have an ethical culture that's able to develop, we have to sit down, find all the black boxes, open them all up, fix them all up, replace them, put something better in each black box's place. And once we do that, things will improve tremendously. The next thing we have to do as leaders is really think about this. We have to move from the question of, hey, is this choice legal, to should we pursue this choice?